What is the doctrine that the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree? Dependent origination. Dependent origination is the principle that the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The doctrine of dependent origination. This arises, therefore that arises. This ceases, therefore that ceases, is a fundamental principle explaining the formation and destruction of phenomena. Dependent origination is the most important doctrine of Buddhism, realized by the Blessed One under the Bodhi tree before he became the Enlightened One, the teacher of gods and humans. It can be said that dependent origination not only elucidates the operational principle of all phenomena in the world, from physical to psychological, with none forming or decaying outside this law, but it also serves as the first theory to refute the Vedic philosophical system of Brahmanism. It denies the creative thought of Brahman, to establish the concept of self-made, self-experienced, emphasizing human agency. Humans are their own masters, with no other authority determining their lives. Furthermore, based on this doctrine, the Blessed One identified ignorance as the deep-rooted cause of human suffering and afflictions, pointing out that only wisdom can eradicate this ignorance. Therefore, based on the theory of dependent origination, he established the 12 links of dependent origination to explain the process of forming human suffering, with the first link being ignorance and the last link being old age and death, representing the state of suffering. In terms of cause and effect, ignorance is the cause and suffering is the effect. Thus, to end the effect of suffering, one must eradicate the cause of ignorance. So how can ignorance be eradicated? The precise answer is the 37 factors of enlightenment, a method of practice in early Buddhism. However, since beings have varying levels of understanding, it is essential to use skillful means to educate them, thus forming all Buddhist teachings. Therefore, dependent origination is a crucial doctrine of Buddhism. Here, we also need to note that the doctrine of the 12 links of dependent origination explains the arising and ceasing of suffering, which pertains to psychological states, not physical ones. Thus, the Sarvastivada school cannot use the theory of the 12 links of dependent origination to explain the real existence of the 3 times, past, present, and future, and the eternal nature of phenomena, which asserts that phenomena, matter, truly exist. Therefore, this school also based on the theory of dependent origination to establish the theory of 6 causes and 4 conditions to explain the formation and existence of phenomena. Therefore, there are differences between the doctrine of dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination, and the theory of 6 causes and 4 conditions. In this article, the author primarily analyzes and explains the meanings and differences of these 3 terms. 1.1 Dependent origination as enlightened by the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. According to the Noble Search Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Blessed One spent 6 years practicing austerities with 2 renowned teachers of his time, Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaput. Legend has it that during this period he practiced extreme asceticism until his body was merely skin and bones, achieving the highest realization of this practice. However, the Blessed One felt dissatisfied as his quest for enlightenment and liberation for himself and all beings remained unfulfilled. Therefore, he decided to leave these teachers and journey to the banks of the Nairanjana River. There, he sat under the Bodhi tree for 49 days and nights in meditation, finally attaining enlightenment on the 49th night. Since then, he has been revered as the Buddha. What is the doctrine that the Blessed One realized under the Bodhi tree? Some believe it to be the 4 Noble Truths, as this doctrine outlines 4 truths of existence: suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. In other words, the truths of suffering and its origin pertain to the way of life of sentient beings, while the truths of cessation and the path correspond to the life of a saint, aligning with the purpose of the Buddha's quest. However, according to this writer, the doctrine realized under the Bodhi tree was not the 4 Noble Truths, but dependent origination. The content of the 4 Noble Truths emerged from the realization of dependent origination, explaining why suffering arises and how to end it. Moreover, dependent origination is the most fundamental doctrine of Buddhism, forming the basis for the 37 factors of enlightenment and other teachings. It also highlights the differences between the Buddhist perspective and traditional and non-traditional Indian philosophies concerning human existence and the cosmos. Specifically, the Noble Search Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya records the Buddha's statement, "Bhikkhus, the Dhamma that I have realized is profound, difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, subtle to be experienced by the wise." In this passage, the profound Dhamma realized by the Buddha under the Bodhi tree is dependent origination, Paticca Samuppada, also known as the doctrine of conditionality. This doctrine reveals that all phenomena arise due to conditions and cease when those conditions are absent, challenging the traditional Indian belief in a creator deity. This understanding aligns with the Buddha's system of teachings, aiming not only for religious practice and liberation, but also for a significant ideological and political reform against the Brahminical system. Dependent origination is a philosophical system with robust reasoning capable of challenging the Brahmanic creation myth. We will further discuss its significance in the following section. 1.2 The meaning of dependent origination. As previously discussed, dependent origination was the doctrine realized by the Blessed One under the Bodhi tree before he became the fully enlightened one. What is the content and meaning of dependent origination? We can refer to Sutras 292, 299, and 348 to 350 in the Samyutta Nikaya, which mention the following verse. When this exists, that comes to be. From the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. From the cessation of this, that ceases. These 4 lines express the principle of dependent origination realized by the Buddha. They embody a law, a rule, a principle. From this principle emerge the 12 links of dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, karma, and even the Sarvastivada school's theory of 6 causes and 4 conditions. The first 2 lines, when this exists, that comes to be, from the arising of this, that arises, refer to the formation of phenomena, illustrating the interdependence between entities. For example, the concept of a father and a son is interdependent. The idea of a father arises only when a son is born. This interdependence is also evident in cause and effect relationships, where causes lead to effects. For instance, parents are the cause and the child is the effect. Therefore, phenomana's existence is impermanent and transitional. If one factor deteriorates, the others follow. Conversely, the last 2 lines, when this does not exist, that does not come to be, from the cessation of this, that ceases, describe the cessation of phenomena. For example, rice is cooked into rice with water, fire, and human intervention. If one of these elements is missing, the rice does not form, representing the dissolution of phenomena. Thus, these 4 lines represent the law of the arising and ceasing of all phenomena, including humans and their consciousness. Nothing forms or dissolves outside this principle. 1.3 Dependent origination as the worldly truth. We often consider the Buddha's teachings as worldly truth. What is the truth? It is a universal principle applicable at all times and places, not a temporary or localized doctrine. Such a principle is a worldly truth. This is reflected in the Buddha's frequent statements. Bhikkhus, I have introduced the Dhamma to you, which is visible here and now, timeless, inviting inspection, leading onward, to be realized by the wise. Here, the Dhamma refers to the principle of dependent origination, or doctrines formed from this principle, which is valuable not only in the present, but also in the past and future. This principle cannot be understood or realized through faith alone, but through wisdom. Anyone with wisdom can see the truth of this principle, not just the Buddha. And whoever understands and practices according to this principle will attain enlightenment and liberation. Naturally, those who are ignorant may not see or understand dependent origination, but this does not invalidate its truth. For example, the basic human principle is to eat and drink to live, but a fool might think humans can live without food and drink. Thus, we cannot invalidate the truth based on the fool's perspective. This defines what we call a truth. Based on this definition, what is the value of the doctrine of dependent origination? To clarify this, we refer to Sutra 296 in the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha explains, whether a Tathagata arises or not, this principle remains. This stability of the Dhamma, this orderliness of the Dhamma, this lawfulness of the Dhamma, all phenomena arise due to conditions. Here the Buddha affirms that dependent origination, realized under the Bodhi tree, is the permanent truth of the world. Whether a Tathagata appears or not, this principle exists in the world, and the arising and ceasing of phenomena depend on it. The Buddha was the first to discover this principle, practicing it to attain benefit, peace, and happiness, and then teaching it for the welfare of all beings. This principle was not created by the Buddha, nor anyone else. As explained in Sutra 299 in the Samyutta Nikaya, during a dialogue between monks and the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, is the doctrine of dependent origination created by the Blessed One or by someone else?" The Buddha replied, "The doctrine of dependent origination is not created by me, nor by anyone else. Whether a Tathagata appears or not, this principle remains, this stability of the Dhamma, this orderliness of the Dhamma, this lawfulness of the Dhamma. All phenomena arise due to conditions. If dependent origination is a universal truth, it means anyone in the world, regardless of religion, must adhere to this principle. Those who act according to it will experience peace and happiness, while those who do not will encounter suffering and affliction." 1.4 Seeing dependent origination is seeing the Buddha. As previously stated, the doctrine realized by the Blessed One under the Bodhi tree is dependent origination. By realizing this principle, the Buddha understood the impermanence of all phenomena. Understanding impermanence, he recognized the selflessness and non-self nature of beings. Suffering arises from clinging to permanence in self, so ending suffering requires eradicating these attachments or ignorance. Thus, the 37 factors of enlightenment and all Buddhist teachings emerged. Dependent origination is fundamental to the Buddhist teachings, explaining why the Agama or Nikaya Sutras state, "One who sees dependent origination sees the Dhamma. One who sees the Dhamma sees dependent origination." This teaching holds profound meaning, emphasizing that all Buddhist teachings are based on dependent origination. It is the truth, the eternal principle of the world, making the Dhamma a description of this worldly truth. Therefore, this principle relates to human life and can be understood and practiced by humans. Anyone who wants to understand the essence of the Buddhist teachings must understand dependent origination, and vice versa. This mutual understanding is achieved through the study of the Tipitaka. Furthermore, another Buddhist saying states, "One who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. One who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma." This statement comes from the Samyutta Nikaya, recounting the story of the monk Vakali, who was gravely ill and wished to see the Blessed One one last time. Unable to travel, Vakali's wish was known to the Buddha, who visited him and asked if he had any requests. Vakali expressed regret for not being able to pay respects to the Buddha in person. The Buddha then said, "Enough, Vakali. What is there to see in this putrid body? He who sees the Dhamma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dhamma." In this response, the Buddha highlights 2 points. First, he emphasizes that the physical body, including his own, is similar to everyone else's, subject to the same impurities and decay. The difference lies in the mind. The Buddha's mind is free from greed, hatred, and delusion, unlike ordinary beings whose minds are entangled in desire, anger, and ignorance. Second, the Buddha asserts that truly seeing him means understanding and practicing his teachings, not merely venerating his physical form. The unique quality of the Buddha is his enlightenment and liberated life. Therefore, one who lives in enlightenment and liberation truly sees the Buddha and the Dhamma. The Buddha and the Dhamma are one and the same, as the Buddha embodies the Dhamma. To honor and respect the Buddha is to understand and live by his teachings, achieving insight and liberation. This is reflected in the Diamond Sutra. "One who sees me through form, who seeks me through sound, engages in misguided efforts. Such a person will not see the Tathagata." Approaching Buddhism is about understanding and knowing, not merely believing. Where there is understanding, there is enlightenment. Where there is enlightenment, there is liberation. Where there is enlightenment and liberation, there is the Buddha. 1.5 Dependent origination as a doctrine opposing the Brahmanic creation theory. The truth realized by the Buddha under the Bodhi tree is dependent origination. It is not only a worldly truth but also a doctrine opposing the Brahmanic creation theory. This is why the Buddha stated in the Noble Search Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, "Bhikkhus, I considered This Dhamma that I have realized is profound, difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. But this generation delights in attachment, takes delight in attachment, rejoices in attachment. It is hard for such a generation to see this truth, namely specific conditionality, dependent origination. And it is hard to see this truth, namely the stilling of all formations, the relinquishing of all attachments, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. If I were to teach the Dhamma and others would not understand me, that would be a wearisome and troublesome affair for me. In this passage, the profound doctrine realized by the Buddha under the Bodhi tree is identified as dependent origination, paticca-samuppada. This doctrine states that phenomena arise due to conditions and not through any creator, challenging traditional Indian beliefs. This explains why the Buddha described the doctrine as profound and difficult to understand, comprehensible only by the wise. This context reflects the unequal and oppressive Brahmanic society, where the Brahmins asserted that Brahma created humans in the universe, thus determining human destiny and justifying the caste system. This belief system supported the Brahmin and Kshatriya classes' dominance, while relegating other classes to servitude. The Vedic scriptures and philosophical texts were treated as the constitution of the ruling class. If the Vedic scriptures and texts were the constitution of the ruling class, then the doctrine of dependent origination, opposing Vedic thought, implied a direct challenge to the ruling class. Declaring this truth could have endangered the Buddha. Conversely, not proclaiming it would mean allowing the ruling class to continue oppressing the lower classes. This dilemma explains why the Buddha expressed his hesitation to teach the Dhamma, fearing misunderstanding and frustration. This difficulty is reflected in the legend of Brahma's request for the Buddha to teach the Dhamma. If Brahma, revered by the Brahmins as the supreme creator, invited the Buddha to teach, then no one could oppose it. This legend protected the Buddha from the ruling class's danger and empowered him to propagate the Dhamma. The theory of dependent origination provides a solid foundation to dismantle the Brahmanic creation myth and the feudal rituals of worship and offerings. It also challenges the caste system's inequality, serving the ruling class. Additionally, dependent origination forms the basis for the theory of karma, opposing the hedonistic and immoral philosophies prevalent in contemporary Indian society. Content and meaning of the 12 links of dependent origination. As previously discussed, dependent origination is a fundamental principle and truth of the world, explaining the formation and destruction of physical and psychological phenomena. It is an unchangeable law. However, this general law does not explicitly explain the origin and cessation of human suffering. Therefore, the Buddha, based on this principle, established the 12 links of dependent origination to elucidate the process of arising and ceasing of afflictions. In the Great Discourse on the Destruction of Craving in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha explains, "Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu understands thus, when this exists, that comes to be, with the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be, with the cessation of this, that ceases. That is, with ignorance as condition, formations come to be. With formations as condition, consciousness. With consciousness as condition, name and form. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact. With contact as condition, feeling. With feeling as condition, craving. With craving as condition, clinging. With clinging as condition, becoming. With becoming as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance comes cessation of formations. With the cessation of formations, cessation of consciousness. With the cessation of consciousness, cessation of name and form. With the cessation of name and form, cessation of the 6 sense bases. With the cessation of the 6 sense bases, cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling. With the cessation of feeling, cessation of craving. With the cessation of craving, cessation of clinging. With the cessation of clinging, cessation of becoming. With the cessation of becoming, cessation of birth. With the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This, Ananda, is the way a bhikkhu is skilled in the law of dependent origination. The quoted passage shows that the statement, when this does not exist, that does not come to be, with the cessation of this, that ceases, is the essence of the law of dependent origination. To explain where human suffering arises, the Buddha, based on this principle, established the 12 links of dependent origination, starting from 1. Ignorance, avijja; 2. Volitional formations, sankhara; 3. Consciousness, vijnana; 4. Name and form, namarupa; 5. The 6 sense bases, salayatana; 6. Contact, phassa; 7. Feeling, vedana; 8. Craving, tanha; 9. Clinging, upadana; 10. Becoming, bhava; 11. Birth, jati; 12. Aging and death, jara marana; sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, soka, paradeva, dukkha, dhammanasupayasa. This sequence illustrates the arising of suffering. The process starts from ignorance and ends with aging and death, representing the most painful aspects of life. Therefore, ignorance is identified as the root cause of suffering. This is the general viewpoint of Buddhism. The meaning of each link is not explained in the quoted passage, so we refer to the Samyukta Dhamma, Sutra 298, to clarify the meaning of each link, starting with ignorance, avijja. Ignorance, avijja. Ignorance means not knowing the former existence, not knowing the future existence, not knowing both the former and the future existence, not knowing within, not knowing without, not knowing both within and without, not knowing karma, not knowing the result of karma, not knowing the result of karma, not knowing the Buddha, not knowing the Dhamma, not knowing the Sangha, not knowing suffering, not knowing the origin of suffering, not knowing the cessation of suffering, not knowing the path leading to the cessation of suffering, not knowing the causes, not knowing the phenomena arising from causes, not knowing what is good, not knowing what is bad, not knowing what is meritorious, not knowing what is not meritorious, not knowing what is coarse, not knowing what is subtle, not knowing what is impure, not knowing what is pure, not knowing the law of dependent origination. This is called ignorance. Ignorance is the first link in the 12 links of dependent origination, defined as not knowing. What is not known? The explanation is extensive, but it can be summarized into several points. 1. Not knowing the nature of self and self-possession. 2. Not knowing about karma and its results. 3. Not knowing the Four Noble Truths. 4. Not knowing the Three Jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. 5. Not knowing what is wholesome and unwholesome. Due to the lack of true understanding of these phenomena, one does not think or contemplate rightly, samasankappa, leading to wrongful actions of body and speech, resulting in suffering. In summary, ignorance is the lack of knowledge and insight, the root cause of suffering. Volitional formations, sankhara. With ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. What are volitional formations? They consist of bodily, verbal, and mental formation. Volitional formations are the second link in the 12 links of dependent origination. They are defined as bodily, verbal, and mental actions. In terms of form, bodily and verbal actions belong to the physical realm, while mental actions belong to the psychological realm. Thus, volitional formations mainly refer to mental actions, as these direct bodily and verbal actions and influence consciousness, serving as the condition for consciousness to arise. Furthermore, since ignorance is a psychological state, it interacts with a psychological object. Therefore, even though volitional formations include bodily and verbal actions, they primarily refer to mental actions. This is the meaning of volitional formations in the 12 links of dependent origination. Consciousness, vijnana. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. What is consciousness? It is the 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. Consciousness is the third link in the 12 links of dependent origination. It arises due to volitional formations, meaning volitional formations condition the arising of consciousness. Consciousness is defined here as 6 types: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. These are the 6 modes of human cognition. Each mode has its specific function. The eye perceives forms and colors, the ear perceives sounds, the nose perceives odors, the tongue perceives tastes, the body perceives tactile sensations, and the mind perceives thoughts and concepts. The mind consciousness aggregates and analyzes the information from the other 5 senses, forming comprehensive perceptions. Thus, consciousness in the 12 links of dependent origination primarily refers to mind consciousness, but includes the functions of all 6 types of consciousness. Name and form, nama-rupa. With consciousness as condition, name and form comes to be. What is name? It is the 4 immaterial aggregates: feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. What is form? It is the 4 great elements and form derived from the 4 great elements. Form combined with name is called name and form. Name and form is the 4th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. It consists of 2 elements, name nama and form rupa. In terms of the 5 aggregates, name includes 4 aggregates: feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Form includes the physical form rupa. Thus, name and form encompasses the entirety of the 5 aggregates. With consciousness driven by ignorance, there is a desire for rebirth, forming the 5 aggregates, name and form. The 6 sense bases, salayatana, with name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases come to be. What are the 6 sense bases? They are the 6 internal sense bases: eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body base, and mind base. The 6 sense bases are the 5th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. These bases include the 6 internal sense bases: eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body base, and mind base. These bases interact with the external world, enabling perception and cognition. The 6 internal sense bases correspond to 6 external objects: forms, sounds, odors, tastes, tactile sensations, and mental objects, dhamma. Through these bases, one perceives the world. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact comes to be. What is contact? It is the 6 classes of contact: eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. Contact is the 6th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Contact refers to the interaction between the sense bases and their objects. It includes 6 types: eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and mind contact. Contact leads to the arising of feeling. Feeling vedana. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. What is feeling? It is threefold: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Feeling is the 7th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Feelings arise from contact and are classified into 3 types: pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings arise from contact with desirable objects, painful feelings from undesirable objects, and neutral feelings from neutral objects. Feelings are the direct response to contact. Craving, tanha. With feeling as condition, craving comes to be. What is craving? It is threefold: craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existent. Craving is the 8th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Craving arises from feelings and is classified into 3 types: craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. Craving for sensual pleasures is the desire for pleasurable experiences. Craving for existence is the desire for continued existence in the realms of form and formlessness. Craving for non-existence is the desire for self-annihilation. Craving leads to clinging. Clinging, upadana. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. What is clinging? It is fourfold: clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and observances, and clinging to a doctrine of self. Clinging is the 9th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Clinging is the attachment to objects of craving and is classified into 4 types: clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and observances, and clinging to a doctrine of self. Clinging is the intensified form of craving, leading to becoming. Becoming, bhava. With clinging as condition, becoming comes to be. What is becoming? It is threefold: becoming in the sense sphere, becoming in the form sphere, and becoming in the formless sphere. Becoming is the 10th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Becoming refers to the process of existence and is classified into 3 types: becoming in the sense sphere, becoming in the form sphere, and becoming in the formless sphere. Becoming leads to birth. Birth, jati. With becoming as condition, birth comes to be. What is birth? The birth of beings into the various orders of beings, their descent into the womb, generation, manifestation of the aggregates, obtaining the basis for contact. This is called birth. Birth is the 11th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Birth refers to the actualization of existence, the emergence of beings into various realms of existence. Birth leads to aging and death. Aging and death, Jara Marana. With birth as condition, aging and death come to be. What is aging? The aging of beings in the various orders of beings, their decay, broken teeth, gray hair, wrinkled skin, decline of life, weakness of faculties. This is called aging. What is death? The passing away of beings from the various orders of beings, their dissolution, disappearance, death, completion of life, breaking up of the aggregates, discarding of the body. This is called death. Aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair thus arise. This is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. Aging and death are the 12th link in the 12 links of dependent origination. Aging refers to the process of physical decay and decline, while death is the cessation of life. Aging and death, along with sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, represent the culmination of the cycle of suffering. The sequence from ignorance to aging and death illustrates the process of the arising of suffering. To end suffering, one must eliminate ignorance. When ignorance ceases, volitional formations cease. When volitional formations cease, consciousness ceases, and so on, leading to the cessation of aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. This is the complete cessation of suffering. The 12 links of dependent origination explain the process of arising and ceasing of suffering. This process does not address the formation and destruction of material phenomena, which is why the Sarvastivada school, based on the principle of dependent origination, established the theory of the 6 causes and 4 conditions. The 6 causes are 1. Conjoined cause, 2. Simultaneous cause, 3. Homogeneous cause, 4. Universal cause, 5. Maturation cause, 6. Efficient cause. The 4 conditions are 1. Condition, 2. Immediate condition, 3. Object condition, 4. Predominant condition. This theory aims to explain the formation and existence of material phenomena. Thus, there is a distinction between the theory of dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination, and the theory of the 6 causes and 4 conditions. Therefore, in the treatise on the middle way, Nagarjuna's critique targets the theory of the 6 causes and 4 conditions, not the theory of dependent origination or the 12 links of dependent origination. This is important to note because if Nagarjuna had criticized the theory of dependent origination, why would he also state in the same treatise, in the 22nd chapter, verse 22, "All things arise due to conditions. I declare they are empty, and these are merely names. They also represent the middle way." The phrase, "all things arise due to conditions," affirms that all phenomena arise due to causes and conditions, which refers to the law of dependent origination. Therefore, it can be said that Nagarjuna uses the theory of dependent origination to critique the theory of the 6 causes and 4 conditions, not to refute the theory of dependent origination itself. Dependent origination is the principle that the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The doctrine of dependent origination, this arises, therefore that arises, this ceases, therefore that ceases, is a fundamental principle explaining the formation and destruction of phenomena. Dependent origination is the most important doctrine of Buddhism, realized by the Blessed One under the Bodhi tree before he became the Enlightened One, the teacher of gods and humans. It can be said that dependent origination not only elucidates the operational principle of all phenomena in the world, from physical to psychological, with none forming or decaying outside this law, but it also serves as the first theory to refute the Vedic philosophical system of Brahmanism. It denies the creative thought of Brahma, Brahman, to establish the concept of self-made, self-experienced, emphasizing human agency. Humans are their own masters, with no other authority determining their lives. Furthermore, based on this doctrine, the Blessed One identified ignorance as the deep-rooted cause of human suffering and afflictions, pointing out that only wisdom can eradicate this ignorance. Therefore, based on the theory of dependent origination, he established the 12 links of dependent origination to explain the process of forming human suffering, with the first link being ignorance, and the last link being old age and death, representing the state of suffering. In terms of cause and effect, ignorance is the cause and suffering is the effect. Thus, to end the effect of suffering, one must eradicate the cause of ignorance. So how can ignorance be eradicated? The precise answer is the 37 factors of enlightenment, a method of practice in early Buddhism. However, since beings have varying levels of understanding, it is essential to use skillful means to educate them, thus forming all Buddhist teachings. Therefore, dependent origination is a crucial doctrine of Buddhism. Here, we also need to note that the doctrine of the 12 links of dependent origination explains the arising and ceasing of suffering, which pertains to psychological states, not physical ones. Thus, the Sarvastivada school cannot use the theory of the 12 links of dependent origination to explain the real existence of the 3 times, past, present, and future, and the eternal nature of phenomena, which asserts that phenomena, matter, truly exist. Therefore, this school also based on the theory of dependent origination to establish the theory of 6 causes and 4 conditions to explain the formation and existence of phenomena. Therefore, there are differences between the doctrine of dependent origination, the 12 links of dependent origination, and the theory of 6 causes and 4 conditions. In this article, the author primarily analyzes and explains the meanings and differences of these 3 terms. Conclusion: the essence of what the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree is the law of dependent origination, paticca, which is the fundamental truth of the world. Whether or not the Buddha appears in the world, this law remains constant and unchanging. It governs the formation and dissolution of all phenomena, whether psychological or physical, from the smallest particle to the largest mountain, from simple ideas to profound philosophical systems. Everything is based on this principle, and nothing exists or ceases to exist outside of it. Thus, it is called a universal truth. The law of dependent origination was neither created by anyone, nor can it be destroyed or replaced by another principle. The Buddha was the first to discover this principle, and out of compassion, he taught it so that others might understand and escape the suffering caused by themselves or others. Dependent origination explains that phenomena arise due to specific conditions and cease when those conditions disperse. This principle carries 2 significant implications. 1. Refutation of Brahmanical creation theory. Dependent origination refutes the Brahmanical theory of creation by a supreme deity, Brahma. In reality, there is no supernatural being with the power to create or destroy the existence of any entity. 2. Interdependence and impermanence. If phenomena arise from conditions, they cannot exist independently but must rely on one another. Therefore, the nature of all phenomena, including human beings, is impermanent. Despite this, human consciousness tends to cling to the idea of this is me, this is mine, rejecting the impermanent nature of phenomena, leading to suffering. Thus, the doctrine of dependent origination reveals the true nature of phenomena, helping us to escape 2 types of suffering. Suffering created by ourselves and suffering imposed by others, such as the Brahmanical system. The Buddha's educational goal is enlightenment and liberation, meaning that enlightenment leads to liberation. Enlightenment is the correct understanding of the world and human nature, not abstract or unrealistic concepts. The truth of the world is the law of dependent origination, and the aim of Buddhism is to help people understand this truth and live according to it, to achieve liberation from suffering. Since dependent origination is the fundamental truth of the world, it is the core around which all Buddhist teachings are formed. In other words, the entire Buddhist doctrinal system in its various forms aims to describe this truth. The law of dependent origination, when this exists, that arises, when this ceases, that ceases, is a general principle explaining the formation and dissolution of phenomena. As a general principle, it does not easily explain the process of arising and ceasing of human afflictions and suffering. Therefore, the Buddha, based on this principle, established the doctrine of the 12 links of dependent origination to explain the process of the arising and ceasing of afflictions. Similarly, while dependent origination serves as a general principle, the 12 links of dependent origination specifically address the psychological aspects of suffering, where human suffering originates and how it can be eliminated. However, This principle does not apply to explaining the formation and dissolution of physical phenomena. Thus, the Sarvastivada school, aiming to explain the reality of phenomena based on the principle of dependent origination, established the theory of the 6 causes and 4 conditions to explain the conditions under which material phenomena are formed. In conclusion, dependent origination is the profound truth realized by the Buddha, and it remains the central tenet of Buddhist philosophy and practice. Understanding and applying this principle helps individuals see the true nature of reality, leading to the cessation of suffering and the attainment of liberation. Application of the doctrine of dependent origination in practice. In life, most people experience more suffering than joy, with happiness being scarce and suffering abundant. We often wish each other all the best in our greetings, which reflects our recognition of the many unsatisfactory aspects in our lives, whether in work, family, marriage, children, or social interactions. These challenges cause suffering for everyone, regardless of wealth, health, or status. Hence, we hope for favorable conditions for everyone. We are interconnected, living in a social community where our happiness or suffering influences others. If we are happy, others will be happy too. So why do we suffer? What causes our suffering? The doctrine of dependent origination teaches us about this. The 12 links of dependent origination represent a cycle of birth and death, a continuous loop of rebirth that we follow unconsciously, driven by karmic forces within the cycle of birth and death. The Buddha perceived this path, attained enlightenment, and revealed it to sentient beings. The operation of dependent origination is divided as follows. Past causes, ignorance, and formations lead to present results: consciousness, name and form, 6 sense bases, contact and feeling. And present causes, craving, clinging, and becoming, result in future outcomes: birth, aging, and death. The Buddha emphasized the roles of ignorance, formations, craving, clinging, and becoming as the causes of samsaric existence. Here, we will focus on the present causes, specifically craving as the root cause of our suffering, leading to clinging and becoming, which in turn result in a chain of suffering. From craving arises the desire to seek, grasp, and enjoy, leading to attachment and the wish to possess, which forms a chain of suffering. When the 5 aggregates encounter a condition, craving arises, leading to clinging and becoming. Craving operates through the 6 senses, desiring pleasant sounds through the ears, pleasant sights through the eyes, pleasant smells through the nose, pleasant tastes through the tongue, pleasant sensations through the body, and pleasant thoughts through the mind. When the 5 aggregates receive conditions of craving, they transform into the 5 aggregates of clinging, resulting in suffering. Worldly people seek happiness through sensory pleasures. In contrast, those who renounce the world choose a different path, seeking inner happiness. Renunciants recognize the dangers of birth, aging, sickness, and death, seeking instead the unconditioned and non-dying. Understanding the doctrine of dependent origination allows us to avoid the suffering caused by cravings. Our bodies, composed of the 5 aggregates, will decay and undergo transformation, becoming ugly and diseased. To prevent the mind from clinging to external conditions, we must live with mindfulness and awareness. To eliminate craving from the mind, we use precepts to guard the sense doors, using precepts to remove defilements. When the eyes see forms, the mind does not grasp the general or particular features. From there, concentration arises, and mindfulness and awareness are always present, developing into wisdom. Using wisdom to recognize and eliminate whatever arises, we do not cling to or retain impressions of objects in the mind. We simply acknowledge them as they are. In seeing, there is only the seen. In hearing, there is only the heard. In sensation, there is only sensation. In cognition, there is only cognition. Without distinguishing or clinging to objects, we are not disturbed by emotions, not entangled in desires, and live peacefully and happily. Happiness is always around us, as long as we recognize it and live with it. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who might benefit from it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button, follow, and turn on the notification bell. This is how you can show your support for me. Once again, thank you very much, and see you in the next videos.